We should have fired Nick Sirianni last year. That's the headline. Why didn't they fire Nick Sirianni last year? Welcome back to another beautiful episode of the Kev BK Beloved podcast. I'm your host, of course, Kev BK Beloved. Joining me today is former college roommate of mine, 1/4 for the Opening Kickoff Podcast, and one of my favorite human beings on the planet, David Miles. How you doing, sir?
I am honored to be one of your favorite human beings on the planet. That's for damn sure. I'm doing pretty good. I mean, you know, when life kicks you. As a Philadelphia fan, it kicks us a lot. Let's leave it at that. But we're doing good over here.
It's funny you mentioned that, Dave, because the first team we're starting with the NFC East, usually I say it's because I'm a gracious host. I'm not sure how gracious this is going to be, is with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a lot going on with the Eagles, most notably an entirely new coaching staff outside of Nick Sirianni, possibly the greatest center ever retiring, but we will get to that shortly. The first question is, though, what's more likely? The Eagles go to the Super Bowl or they miss the playoffs altogether?
I think that you'd have to be a true Eagles hater to say that there's not a strong chance for them to make the Super Bowl. And that's not me. That's not coming from a annoying Eagles fan. That's coming from a realistic person. I mean, looking at this roster, the last 3-4 years, they've been a strong contender. And last year, you can look at the collapse of that team. Even then, they were still in contention to make this. So they were in the playoffs. Yes, they fell from 1 to 5. It still doesn't matter. When you look at the additions they had, yes, that makes them a lot better of a team. But that comes to the forefront of, is this coaching staff the right thing? So I don't think that there's a way that this team misses the playoffs unless they do it last year and just decide to just blow it all up. But that's just me.
All right, so here's my counterpoint to that. The problem with the Eagles last year was not a personnel issue. It wasn't, which is why everyone but Nick Sirianni ended up getting fired. And here's the thing with the NFC East, and there's two teams in this division, one of which we'll get to much later, that in most circumstances, I will look at their past offseason and say, oh, they're set up for the most disappointing regular season that we've seen in a while. Like second half of the Eagles season last year just stretched over a whole year. The Eagles are one of those teams. If you were to ask me what's the formula for a really bad team coming off of a disappointing season the year before, you miss out. We mentioned the loss of Jason Kelce. We'll expound more on that in a second. The whole new coaching staff thing, most recently Jalen Hurts saying everything on our offense is different, which don't know why you would do that, Kellen Moore. And it's just everywhere I turn with the Eagles, I've not liked a single offseason thing that has come out from that team. I just haven't. But there's another team in this division that we will get to at the end that I will say the exact same thing about. So one of those teams are not going to make the playoffs. I'm unsure which one it is, but whoever does not win the NFC East, there will not be a wild card team from this division. I'm stamping that now. Nobody from the NFC is making a wild card.
I put it this way, and I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible. I don't like the moves that the Eagles have made for the sense of fixing the problem, but for those moves that they made, they damn sure didn't regress. And I can't say that about the other team. That's where my issues is with this team is. Are these moves you made moves to get better in actuality compared to what, and I guess in actuality as opposed to the issues, or did you just make upgrades but not really address the issue? And this goes to your point of they changed the whole coaching staff but one person. In my opinion, that one person was a hell of a huge deal in that problem. I'm not saying he is the problem, but I don't think that they did enough to, at least I can't see that they did enough to address that issue.
So here's the one personnel thing before we actually get to like the meat and potatoes of the Eagles section of this show. The one personnel thing that you guys are undeniably worse at is the defensive line, which was the strength of this team for years. Was the offensive line, defensive line, we finna whoop your ass on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Yeah. The Eagles don't have that depth of the pass rushers as they used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm looking at the most. Like, all right, That's what it is. Like, I think Cam Jurgens is going to be a serviceable replacement for Jason Kelce. Obviously, there is no Jason Kelce, but that's not where I'm concerned. It's the defensive line for a team that already struggled against the run the year before is where my concern comes in.
Well, to address your issue with the offensive line, a lot of people have to realize Jason Kelce sat out a couple of games last year. And like you said, Cam Jurgens was a serviceable replacement. You're not going to replace Jason Kelce. That's a fact.
No.
And are there going to, is the tush push going to go down in number? Most likely. But also,
hold on, real quick. Can I talk about just how fucking efficient the tush push is right here?
Because nobody else could do it.
Thank you. And that's why I've always argued the play should not be banned, because it's not a cheat code play. Only one team can do it.
Exactly.
And everyone tried, everyone else failed. To the point that the Eagles have a 92.5% success rate. Nothing even comes close to that in the league. They had 13 touchdowns off the tush push, and I couldn't even find the first down number. I'm assuming it's astronomically high if it's a 92.5% success rate. The Eagles are so good at this play, but a lot of that had to do with Jason Kelce. How much tush push lessons was Cam Jurgens getting from Jason Kelce last year?
Well, if I remember correctly, in the games that Jason Kelce didn't play and Cam Jurgens was the center, they did run it a couple times, but like I said, the number is going to drop significantly.
Of course.
And that's where I think a lot of the aggression may subside, and it may kind of lean more on the 5-star running back we just spent of the bank and a half on.
Yes.
Or maybe even the two receivers that we have that are in the top 10 receivers in the league, arguably top 5, depending on who you have a conversation with. I'm more leaning on top 10. I'm not delusional, but I love hearing the top 5 discussions. But it's one of those things where, like, yes, you have to look at who is on your roster this year enough to make things efficient. Is the tush push going to reduce the number? Yes, but I also think that this offensive line with the running back we now have, and that's no disrespect to DeAndre Swift. I love DeAndre Swift. He's a local guy, but so is Saquon. Who you gonna choose between the two? And that's kind of where, but that kind of goes back to the point of, are these moves better in actuality instead of on paper? On paper, we can both acknowledge that Saquon Barkley is the better person, is the better running back. But yeah, in the actual scheme that we need to run to be successful, is Saquon really? Do we need a shifty back, or do we need someone who's gonna plant and go? That's something that I'm curious to see how this is gonna work out this year. But I'm going to enjoy the ride this year and not be that typical Philly fan saying, we're going to the bowl after preseason week 2. Like, right. I'm not going to do it.
All right. So the last question I have before we move on is the defense. Now, the additions that you guys brought in the defense, Devin White, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Zach Braun. The Devin White thing, I think, is a much bigger name than he is a good player at this point in his career. If you haven't watched the Bucs since they won the Super Bowl, you disagree with that statement. But if you watched them last year, you're like, oh, okay. It's not exactly the same player he used to be, especially when you compare him to a Levante David who was standing next to him that whole time.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with I love this move as far as getting experience at the linebacker level, because we've needed people who are experienced and people who also can do the right thing. I'm trying not to curse here. And the
motherfucker, curse it. This is my show. Curse all you want to. What are you talking about? What?
Look,
you know who you're talking to right now?
I know that on YouTube they have that time period where you can't curse, you hurt your demands. I'm trying get everybody paid here. But with the Eagles, the issue is they've never been able to address the linebacker position at a good point. Either they have a guy who's washed up, or they have not washed up. That's kind of wild to say. But they either have a guy who is on his tail end of his career, or they have a guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. And I don't want to disrespect the NFL players, because I played linebacker in high school and college, and their leaps and downs better than me. But if I'm watching film and I can make the right read, I don't understand how an NFL player can't. And that's my issue with the linebacking core. And also, if you have a secure linebacking core, that, in my opinion, directly deflects the secondary. The secondary has been a sore spot in the last couple of years. We've seen since Bradbury's hold in the Super Bowl, if you want to be honest, but it's been longer than that. It's been a year's culmination of a whole bunch of things. This year's pickups with the linebacking core and secondary core, and that goes back to your defensive line point. Yes, our defensive line may be significantly weaker, but everywhere else got better on the defense. And I think that's where when you look at the games that it hurt us, the secondary hurt us, and the linebacking core hurt us, the line and the defensive line saved us. It's going to be the reverse, but I think that could work out because we're going more towards a league where you need to have that better secondary and that better linebacking core. You can hide behind an average defensive line. And I'm not saying averages and the Eagles are average. I think Nakobe Dean, I think Brandon Graham are going to have those guys ready. I think with the blitzing linebackers that we have, it could work out. But I am more than willing to say that, yes, our defensive line is not great, but our secondary is leaps and bounds better, and our linebacking core has made improvements.
So you brought up the secondary point, and this will be the last thing before we move to our last part of the Eagles segment. Y'all gonna have two white DBs on the field at the same time? Y'all gonna have two?
I mean, hey, if you could do the goddamn job, I don't really care.
Y'all gonna have Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship on the field?
I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, Cooper may be in the rotation. I don't think he's gonna start out there, but I want to ask you, who you gonna put out there that hasn't already shit the bed in the last couple of years?
Fair point. So to be fair, I'm messing around. I liked Cooper DeJean. If you heard my draft coverage, you know I like Cooper DeJean. I love Quinyon Mitchell. I think he's going to be y'all best defensive player almost immediately when he walks through the door. Outside of maybe Jalen Carter, depends on how he takes the leap. Like
and Darius Slay.
No, I said what I said. No, I said what I said. I think Quinyon Mitchell is incredible. I think he's really good. He was my best defensive player at last year's draft. I think he's outstanding. But, all right, so last thing with the Eagles. It is February 2025. I should probably look up the exact date of this, but I don't feel like it.
That's
the day after the Super Bowl. The headline for the Eagles season is what?
Redemption. One word. Redemption. And I'm not saying redemption in the sense of they won the Super Bowl, but redemption in the sense of there's a clear path forward that's positive compared to the meltdown we just witnessed last year. And even that goes back to this year, the exit interview and the exit press conference that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie gave the sense of they didn't know what was going on, or they didn't really have any answers. I think that this year they're gonna get the shit together, and that exit interview or that last headline on February whatever is going to be a redemption in a sense of we now know what we need to do to move forward. We've redeemed ourselves from that pitiful dumpster fire, and we're moving forward in the right direction.
So what I kind of want to put a game on it. Like, what is the bottom level of what redemption means? Are we talking make it to a conference championship? Are we talking
conference championship? It is you have to play. You have to play for something that you have to play for some type of title. Like winning the division is not an accomplishment in the NFC East anymore. Why? Because how many teams in the NFC East have won a Super Bowl in the last 20 years? Two of us.
Just the Giants, right? Just the Giants. Y'all didn't win a Super Bowl. Y'all went. Oh wait, no, y'all won. My brain just exploded. We watched that game together. And one of the worst memories of my life. That is a podcast for another day. But that's a podcast for another day. All right, so my headline for the Eagles season. You're not gonna like this.
Of course.
We should have fired Nick Sirianni last year.
I can believe that.
We should have. That's the headline. Why didn't they fire Nick Sirianni last year? Because I refuse to believe that every other coach on the staff was the problem but him. I just refuse to believe that. Like,
okay, so you want my honest take here about Nick Sirianni?
Go for it, and then we'll move on to the next team.
He was the issue, but because he's the head coach, and also you switch defensive coordinators midway through the year, that was his way of not getting held accountable. Because you're not going to tell me, I refuse to believe that that Nick Sirianni was not complacent in what was going on. And also you lost the locker room. you lost the locker room. There's no way in the world you have that many breakdowns of communication and you can't reel it in. That's been my biggest beef with him.
That's your literal job as the head coach.
Exactly. Like,
it's your job.
You don't call offensive plays. You don't call defensive plays. You don't run the special teams. So what do you do? What do you do? So that's my biggest. So that's my biggest beef with Nick Sirianni. If this year's the year where he proves me wrong, great. I am happy. Enjoy your job, Nick. If you have anything less than the conference championship this year, I am more than sure he's on the hot seat. If he's not already.